You have queued up in your podcast feed a brand new episode of the Coaching Life Podcast. We told you so. Welcome back to another edition of the Coaching Life Podcast with myself, Chris Stewart, and my good friend, Patrick Martin. I call him Pat, but it sounds so sophisticated to call him Patrick, so that's what I'll call him today. We have a great episode for you today, and it's one that came as a little bit of a surprise to us. We had an idea for a segment that we thought would be about 5 or 10 minutes at the most, but the conversation went so well that it ended up becoming an entire episode. In recent days, the entire nation, at least in the sports world, has had their eyes and their attention focused on Joe Burrow, perhaps one of the greatest college quarterbacks that we'll ever see play the game. Certainly proved it through breaking records, winning the Heisman, leading his team to an undefeated 15-0 season, winning the national championship by a huge margin over a team that hadn't lost a game in 2 years. Just an absolutely incredible thing. And that young man comes from the town in which we record our podcast every week. He comes from a place where I watched him grow up as a youth football player, as a young man playing basketball, baseball, and of course football here in Athens, Ohio. And we, in this part of the world, saw something a long time ago that the rest of the world is just now seeing and beginning to admit for themselves. All of us just want to say, hey, we told you so. This is what we saw. Plainly speaking, we knew this guy would be great. And we're going to tell you why today. It's episode 37 of the Coaching Life Podcast, and it starts right now. Hey, we welcome you to a new episode of the Coaching Life Podcast. And I should sound the same, but I think Pat's been dealing with some sickness here for about, a week and a half now?
A week.
But you sound a lot better now. Welcome, Pat. Hi.
Thanks, Coach.
I was going to say, how are you doing? But I know how you have felt for the past couple of weeks, but how do you feel right now?
This is the first time. That's not true. I was outside yesterday. So my walk up here to the studio was the third time that I've been outside since last Wednesday, since the last time we recorded.
And we've had great weather here in Southeast Ohio.
Hey, I walked outside yesterday.
What was it like?
The smell. Very familiar smell.
I know
was in
that
the
smell.
air.
I know what smell you're talking about.
It brought me back to my high school days.
Yep. Genuine rawhide leather.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, you got it. It's baseball season.
Yeah.
It smells like baseball season out there.
There's something about that air out there when you walk out that just it takes you directly to a season.
Gives you
smell
life.
it in the fall too. You can smell a different smell in the fall.
Oh yeah.
That takes you to football season for me. I don't know, but there's nothing that baseball smell in the spring is so distinct, and when you get it in the middle of winter, like we have right now, we've been getting it for about a week. It was 70 degrees a few days ago. It's incredible.
I guess that's the disappointing part. It's like it's a tease because it really isn't.
Well, what it means,
we're close. I mean, we're not too far.
Yeah, but usually what that means in Ohio or where we are is that in April we're going to get a big snowstorm. When we're in the second week of everybody's in the second week of their high school baseball and softball seasons. They're out there running around the track in those little thin track uniforms and it's icing, because they don't cancel many track meets for anything, not that I am aware of.
Yeah,
so
it was just good though to get that feel
no doubt.
To have that again, I don't know that I actually recognize that every spring, to be honest with you, or I haven't. I don't know. Maybe I have. Yeah, maybe it was because I was sick.
I bet subconsciously you do.
You think so?
Yeah, all baseball guys do. So. Well, folks, we have a couple different things we have on the agenda for today, and we're actually going to. We have a plan. We came in with a plan. We've had a plan for about a week or two now to talk early in this year about some of the practical things that Pat and I have been talking about and wanting to put on the calendar for 2020 to actually put the coaching life into action, I guess you can say. And so we want to talk about some of those things, and one in particular that's coming up really soon for us. But we also, this is a surprise thing. We're going to go impromptu here just for a minute. We're going to try something that we've never tried before on the Coaching Life Podcast. We are going to live call one of our old guests Lucas Moore. Lucas now lives in Chicago. He's no longer in the Southeast Ohio area. And you might remember we had Lucas on back about 7 or 8 episodes ago. And at the end of his episode, are you looking to see what number his episode is?
I think it's 14.
Episode 14.
Yeah.
So it's been a while then. So
I can find that real quick.
Have done quite a few since then.
Yep.
But at the end of his episode is the first time we ever really we included outtakes, and those outtakes were funny to me. They weren't as funny to Pat, I don't think. But if you remember, if you don't remember, go back and listen to it. You got to listen to those first because it'll put some context to this conversation we're about to have with Lucas. But those outtakes included a lot of back and forth, mostly between Pat and Lucas, about the Browns, about the Bengals, and about, of course, Joe Burrow. And this was, when we recorded that episode, it was, I think, the end of September. It was like the 3rd week of September. So the college football season was only, at most, 3 games in. And what was Lucas saying back then about Joe Burrow? Heisman, he's without a doubt going to run away with the Heisman. He's going to be the first overall pick in the draft. He knew. He was a prophet, I guess you could say.
You know what he
about
didn't
that.
guess?
What did he not guess?
Specifically, that the Bengals were going to have the number 1 pick.
Lucas is a big Bengals fan.
Oh, gosh.
And he at that time had no idea that the Bengals were going to be horrible this year and end up with the number 1 pick in the draft. And
he probably didn't think they'd be as bad as what they were.
Yeah. So we're going to find out what Lucas. So we're on the a couple days after the national championship game where LSU just put a cap on, I would say, the greatest college football season in the history of the game.
It's definitely debatable. I mean, you look at the schedule that they went through, and the only thing that I would have liked to have seen is an Ohio State LSU.
Oh yeah. I would have loved to have seen that matchup as well.
But Clemson was.
But everyone assumed Clemson's defense was the best defense in the nation.
I never did think so. I haven't given Clemson.
They looked at those first couple of. I know.
Oh yeah,
I haven't either.
They're very well coached.
Yes,
they're
they are
very well coached, and they were ready. They had a great game plan.
You just can't sustain it against that offense, against LSU's offense. You just can't sustain it.
Yeah.
Against this year's offense. It'll be interesting to see what they do, especially with now Joe Brady leaving. And of course, boy, how would you like to be Miles Brennan?
Yeah.
I mean, you're all eyes are on you. So, I mean, if you like pressure, then shine, young man. But man, there's a lot of pressure on that dude next year.
But how would you like to be Joe Burrow coming into
a
university that,
yeah, I mean,
historically does not pass the football.
That's true,
right?
And I have a feeling that he was very instrumental in, basically transforming the way they do offense at Louisiana State University. Granted, Coach O has incredible vision. He was incredible delegatory, will to give a lot of control over.
Absolutely.
And don't forget Steve Ensminger, who also has that humility about him to say, Coach O asked him, "Hey, I'm going to bring in a guy. We got to revamp the way we do everything. I got to bring somebody in. Would you be willing to work with him?" Steve was like, "Sure."
Yeah.
And who's gotten all the credit this year? Joe Brady.
Yeah.
Has gotten all that credit. The fact that this offense looked a heck of a lot like what I'm talking about Burrow now, ran here in Athens in high school, tells me that, and just knowing his personality, I mean, he's going to go into whatever organization he plays for, and he's going to let them know this is not good enough.
Yeah.
And I got a feeling that's what he did. And he'll do it wherever he goes in the NFL. Listen to me saying wherever he goes. We know where he's going.
He's going to the Panthers, right?
Say that to Lucas here. You ready to call him?
Yeah, we're good.
Let's call him. He's ready.
See what he's good to go. Okay, here we go.
All right.
Hello?
Lucas,
we actually are recording now. Pat and I have been recording for the past 10 minutes because we wanted to get absolute 100% first reaction from you on the phone from this past week.
Oh, so you're surprising me?
We are surprising you. That is correct. That's correct. We've already teased that you're coming on. We told our audience that we're going to call you. That you now live in Chicago. Which, by the way, before we talk about football, how is it out there? What's life like for you these days?
I really love it so far. The way I describe Chicago to everybody that's from Athens or around Athens, it's like, imagine if Athens had, I don't know, a 3-week trip to a basic training and then add about 2 million people. And that's what Chicago is. It's a very similar city in a lot of ways. It's got a lot of energy. It's got a lot of buzz.
Yeah,
I really like it. And I think that people from Athens, especially that went to Ohio University, fit well in this city in terms of the city's just attitude and personality. And I love that it's like New York, but not as New Yorkish, right?
No doubt.
You get all the benefits of one of those really, really big cities, tons of people, big buildings, lots of places to shop, but it still has that Midwestern, familiar, at-home, friendly vibe, at least for most people. I mean,
you must experience that living there.
Rough in Chicago, but it's been a lot of fun. I love the city so far.
Well, good. I was surprised at how I agree with that from a visitor standpoint. When April and I lived in St. Louis, we used to visit Chicago quite often, actually. It was one of my favorite cities to visit. I was shocked the first time I went there how huge that city is. It's a big city.
Yeah.
So
I love any city.
Yeah, it's massive. Like, it was a disaster this morning because I needed a car for a meeting, and my girlfriend works downtown, and it's such a big city that if she took the car keys, now that completely throws off my whole day because I've got to go all the way downtown and then back, and just those things can get annoying. But
no doubt, it's not like living in University Commons and taking it to campus, right?
Yeah, no, it's not a 5-minute run to a hall to go get it. It's a 25-minute bus trip, so it's a little different.
Yeah. Well, Lucas, one of the things that Pat and I have been talking about here today is the fact that, do you remember when you were on with us in the episode that we recorded back on episode 14, I think it was, of the Coaching Life podcast? We did an outtakes segment at the end of the episode. Did you listen to those outtakes?
I did, but
back then?
I can't remember exactly what I said. I know that I didn't like Baker Mayfield and I love Joe Burrow, which is still my opinion today, but I can't remember if I made any predictions or anything.
You did make predictions. In fact, you said on September, that would have been September 21st or something like that. So about 2 weeks into the college football season, 3 weeks maybe into the college football season, you said at that time, you said a few things about the Browns too, but we'll get into that in a little bit.
No, we won't.
You said,
well, I was right about all those things too. So.
Yes, you were. You said Joe Burrow, hands down, is going to win the Heisman Trophy. It's not even going to be a question. And you said, I don't know that we said that LSU was going to win the national championship, not yet. But you also said that he would hands down be, without a doubt, the number one pick in the draft, which those were two pretty bold statements at that time, I think.
Number one pick is a very bold statement.
Because at that point, he was being projected to be in the 5th round, I believe, by most experts.
A lot of people, in our conversation before we went on air, or before we began recording, I guess I should say, we're talking about maybe not the 5th round, but he'll definitely go in the 2nd round.
He'll move up.
And then, I thought he would. I always thought he would go in the 1st round, just late. I'd said late, and
he just went off. He just went off.
Well, yeah, he did.
Well, that was. I remember that day. That was the day because I had that opinion. I had this idea that he would be a 1st round pick, that he would eventually work his way into that. Because of all those things that your guys' podcast is about, right? The coachability, the intangibles, the leadership, the accuracy, that he would make his way into the 1st round through the draft process. But the reason I was able to made the jump to 1st overall is because CBS Sports, I like to listen to the experts. They have their ear on the ground a little bit more. He was put into a mock draft on the 1st round back whenever I was on that podcast. I remember it was like the day before. And when I saw that, that means somebody in the industry had been talking to scouts, to general managers, and had gotten word that Joe Burrow is now on 1st round radars. And as soon as I heard that, I knew that he was going to end up being the number 1 overall pick because of all those things we know about Joe Burrow. Yeah. Like, this is the thing. It's so weird hearing all these national media guys just get Joe wrong, just get what just happened at LSU wrong, because it's hard to get a kid that's this special right. They're not even getting right what makes him tick, what makes him great, what makes him special. Yeah. And they will see that in time, and people are starting to see that slowly. But as people from Athens, as people that are familiar with his story, it's it's something that I think we saw coming early. And that's what I was trying to tell you guys is, hey, he's got this, this, and that, and nobody knows about all the stuff we know about. So I think he'll end up being the number 1 overall pick. Now, I did not think he would throw 60 touchdowns and 1,000 yards and do all the things that LSU did. I didn't think that would happen.
Yeah, we thought that was just a TVC anomaly.
Yeah, I thought,
Right.
Listen, the fact that you can match up his senior year at Athens High School, 15 games, they played 15 games, the same as he just did, where he played 7 of the top 10 college football teams in the country, and you can line up those 2 seasons, and it is clearly a better season what he did his senior year at LSU than he did his senior year at Athens is terrifying.
Yeah, and that's
something that I didn't even fathom.
Oh, I know.
Was possible. It was unbelievable.
And to me, that's his biggest selling point when it comes to transitioning to the NFL, because you'll hear analysts say, well, he only had that one big year, and
that's
like,
the big thing now.
Everyone's scared of that, well, he only had one big year. So, you don't know if he's going to be successful in the NFL. No, you do know he's going to be successful in the NFL because he's going to adjust.
The dude just keeps getting better.
Exactly.
This is a person who visibly, in every way that you can imagine, rises to the level of his competition. And not just rises to the level of his competition, he blows it away.
Yeah.
He rises above the level of competition, which is an amazing thing. But no, you were right on, brother.
Yeah, and well, I appreciate you guys bringing that up and pulling that out. And I was actually tracking who said it. Maybe somebody else did out there, but I really do believe that people that are in any media role all across the country, I have a belief that I was at least one of the first 10 people to really believe that he should be the number 1 overall pick. Now, if the Bengals mess this up for me, fellas,
that's where we're going next.
Lord.
That's the transition we wanted to make. That's the thing you did not predict back then, Lucas. You did not think we didn't ask you. We weren't thinking about that far down the road in the NFL season, but. How about the fact that your Bengals are going to get this guy? Maybe.
I mean, it's exciting. Because I had a pipe dream. I had a pipe dream that, like, hey, listen, I think that Burrow should be a late first rounder, mid first rounder, and that he can fall to the Bengals. That's what I was thinking. Well, good on Andy Dalton and Zach Taylor and the crew for just matching what Joe, and then I thought Joe Burrow was going to be a mid-rounder. Then I thought the Bengals were going to be the mid-round, so I had hope for it. Then I started to think Joe Burrow was going to be the number 1 overall pick, and I lost hope for it because I thought the Dolphins or the Redskins or the collection of other bad teams.
Do you think the Redskins would have chosen him?
The Cincinnati Bengals.
Do you think the Redskins would have chosen him with Haskins in their their pocket?
I can see what he's saying because I think Haskins has actually outperformed maybe
it's
a lot
not
of
that the Redskins would have done it. It's that the Redskins would then have the option to let somebody else trade up and take him.
Yeah.
But now it's completely in the Bengals' control. And I never thought that would happen. And I still didn't think it would happen because the Bengals tried to come back and beat the Miami Dolphins at the end of the season.
Yes, they did.
Which is the most awful comeback ever. The most awful Hail Mary I've ever seen, but thank the Lord Ryan Fitzpatrick pulled it off, and then it matched up. It's turning into, and I hate everybody's, like, this is the one thing I really do want to say. I hate everybody's, especially in southeastern Ohio, everybody's negativity towards him going to the Cincinnati Bengals because the Cincinnati Bengals are not, sorry, Patrick, the Cleveland Browns. They are not the Detroit Lions. They are not the Miami Dolphins. The Cincinnati Bengals over this decade have won more games than everybody outside of 5 teams in the AFC, meaning that over the course of the decade, if you want to do a playoff seeding, the Bengals would be in the playoffs. They're one of the best 6 franchises in the conference. I get they had a 2-14 year. So did the 49ers.
It seems like those opinions are only coming from this year and last year, the last 17, 18 games or so.
There's a reason for that, though. There's a reason for that. It's because you fired the guy mostly responsible for it.
All their success.
Yeah. Now you've got Mike Brown and his depleted scouting department that, is his best friend and his best friend's roommate from college. Listening to all these analysts.
The scouting department stuff is not true when you look at the drafts because the Bengals have been graded A, draft after draft after draft.
Well,
so I don't know.
They've picked high-profile players.
That's 2007, 2008.
But they do have a small scouting department, though, right?
What? Excuse me, could you repeat that?
They do have a small scouting department, and Mike Brown has a heavy say in those decisions. And
yeah, but like, listen, Geno Atkins was a 3rd-round draft pick. Sam Hubbard, who just had 8.5 sacks this year, was a 2nd-round draft pick. They drafted A.J. Green. Andy Dalton was a Pro Bowler.
They actually drafted a lot of guys in the past, too, that got hurt that had promising careers. But here's my point, Lucas. Mike Brown's going to be sitting around listening to all these analysts say, Joe Burrow is kind of a rich man's Andy Dalton. And Mike Brown might start thinking, well, I've got Andy Dalton. And the Dolphins will probably give me 3 first-round picks for this number 1 pick. That'd really make our team better, those 3 first-round picks.
He's really lobbying up here in Ohio to get.
Well, I'm gonna take you back to Mike Brown's decision-making back in the 90s, where the Bengals had the opportunity to select Achilles Smith, not with the 1st overall pick, but with, I believe, the 2nd, it might have been the 3rd overall pick. They got a call because the team wanted Ricky Williams. They got a call that the Saints wanted to offer every single pick in the NFL draft that season and the future first. And Achilles Smith was on the board, and Mike Brown still took him. Now, do we think Mike Brown is a guy that changes his mind over time? No, he likes to make similar decisions. So now you have a guy who is the greatest college quarterback ever, who grew up in your state, and you're a team that hasn't been able to fill that stadium since 2015. So you're going to have a large opportunity to have a huge fan base boost by drafting Joe Burrow. Jersey sales it's crazy jersey sales. And then he runs your coach's system. Zach Taylor is a West Coast guy, right? The LSU offense is Saints. It's West Coast based. The terminology is similar, and the type of quarterback that Zach Taylor wants. Jared Goff is like a mini little Joe Burrow. I think Burrow's got a lot more mobility, can throw on the run better. But, like, they're not awfully different quarterbacks. Like, this is such a perfect fit. And off the field, on the field for the Cincinnati Bengals, that if they don't make this pick, guys, I have lived and died by the Cincinnati Bengals since I was 4 years old. If they don't make this pick, until Mike Brown either sells the team, actually until the family sells the team, I would be done. I would never.
You're starting to sound like a Cowboys fan.
No, I wouldn't be a fan of.
I'm a Cowboys fan, and I say the same thing every year about Jerry Jones and the family. And
no, but like, listen, you've got Super Bowls as the Cowboys.
It's been a long time,
pick.
not since you've been born.
Unbelievable layup pick. This is a layup, guys. I mean, it's a free layup.
Oh, I don't
matter the draft.
Disagree with that.
You could offer me 350 draft picks, and I wouldn't take it.
I saw your tweet about that, and you know what? I think most people that read that like pay attention would say you're absolutely crazy, but I agree with you. I think you're right. When you have your guy, you get your guy.
He has the ability to transform. I mean, we were talking about this before we called you, Lucas, that the thing that people don't, that maybe they're starting to see it now, but the thing that we just kept saying, people who knew Joe, who know him, he is the kind of guy that has the ability, and we were saying this back on the podcast with you, he has the ability to completely transform any organization that he comes into.
Yeah, that's what he's elite at.
Yeah.
I know that Ed Orgeron had some incredible decisions to make when he went to Steve Ensminger and said that, hey, we need to completely redo our offense. Would you mind if I brought someone in? Steve said yes. Took the very humble road and said yes, I would be willing to work with someone. Joe Brady comes in, so Joe Brady gets a whole bunch of credit for it. But I'm telling you now, behind the scenes, it would not surprise me at all to learn that Joe Burrow was also saying this isn't working. We've got to change it.
Well, it shouldn't surprise you because that's the truth. So let me take you through a few quotes from this season from LSU players. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, after the championship game, said, Burrow, not a coach, not Ensminger, not Joe Brady, Joe Burrow told us we needed to be perfect, demanded perfection.
I do remember that.
From us. There were quotes from receivers during the season that say, I learned something new from Joe Burrow every day. You guys know that Joe Burrow broke down film on the weekends and then handed his idea for the game plan to the coaches.
It's what he did in high school.
This is stuff Peyton Manning did when he was 25, 26 years old. His football mind.
Joe was doing that as a 16-year-old. He left. There was 1 year that he was thinking about playing baseball when I was the head baseball coach here at Athens. And he came out to a summer game Okay, he came to a couple of them, but at this one particular game, he came to me beforehand. He said, "Coach, I'm going to have to leave about halfway through because my dad and I, and this is in the summer, all right. My dad and I are looking at. We have a film session, and I asked him a little bit about what he's talking about, and he said that they sit down together and he teaches them how to break it down, what to look for.
He
and
was
his dad,
studying.
his dad Jimmy is a defensive coordinator. And he was basically studying, preparing for how to break down film. This was between his junior and senior year, so he was 17 years old.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that stuff is the stuff of legends, guys. These are stories that when it's put in a 30 for 30 documentary in 20 years from now, people are going to drop their jaws. And we know these stories. We know that it's special already. And the thing I wanted to circle back around to the Southeastern Ohio and why I'm kind of mad at everybody not wanting him to go to the Bengals. They don't want him to go to the Bengals just because they think the Bengals are so bad that they'll screw them up. Well, guess
Screw
what?
him up.
How many playoff wins? How many playoff wins did Athens High School have before Joe Burrow was a starting quarterback? Oh, 0.
Yeah.
0. Had never done it. And next thing you know, they were in the state championship game. And I love the Lerman twins. I love Zakiah Saltzman. I love Trey Williams. These are all great players, and there were a lot of great players on that team. But I personally guarantee you a lot of those guys wouldn't have been in the places they are in college football now if Joe Burrow weren't there to motivate them, to elevate them, to be a leader to them, and to take that team to places that you never thought possible.
I think all those guys would say that. I think every one of those guys you mentioned would say that, and they wouldn't just say it about high school because they were with Joe from 7 years old, and the same thing was happening back then as well.
Yeah, and I think it's like everybody wonders how on earth all those great players all of a sudden were at Athens High School. And now everybody's wondering how on earth LSU now has all these great players, all these
great two-star receivers, right?
Right. Last year they led the NCAA in drops. So how on earth did that happen?
Same guys.
So was it
yes.
Did Joe Burrow get really lucky twice to have the highest scoring offense in Ohio history than the highest scoring offense in college history? Or is it probably one of these things is in the same place? Joe Burrow elevates both. And it's not because of him. It's not just him throwing, guys. It's the coaching. It's the leadership. It's the drive. You got 15 kids from Athens High School. It's not St. Ignatius. It's not Kirtland. 15 kids on offense every day working through the summer into the fall, except when they're playing basketball, every day on Rudder Field that's now called the Joe Burrow Stadium, right? So that was what was happening then. We know these stories. This is not normal stuff. Trevor, this is not normal stuff. And I've been trying to tell people time and time again, this kid is not normal. This kid is special beyond belief. And if he were from any other region in the country, guys, any other region outside of Southeastern Ohio, he would be a surefire. It's just this region has, because nobody credits him for his high school success. That's why he was doubted going into Ohio State. That's why Urban Meyer never bought into him. He probably should have been the starter there after his sophomore year. I think he should have been starting over JT Barrow way earlier.
Agreed.
So him playing in Southeastern Ohio has hurt.
Ohio State fans will never agree with that, though.
I'm an Ohio State fan.
I'm an Ohio State fan as well, but there's Ohio State fans, and then there are crazy Ohio State fans.
I think that he fit the offense that they ran at Ohio State better than Dwayne Haskins did.
Oh, no
Dwayne
doubt.
Haskins couldn't run and chew gum at the same
he's
time.
got concrete in his shoes. Yeah,
exactly. And that was Burrow's offense. I always felt that was a mistake.
You know, the things, Lucas, basically to support what you're saying there, everything that people in Southeast Ohio were saying about Joe, really from the time he was at Ohio State, but especially in the last couple of years since he went to LSU, that was getting brushed off by the rest of the world. I mean, you guys, I mean, that's your guy. And so, of course you're going to root for him. Of course you're going to say those things about him. The very things that were being said that were getting brushed off by the rest of the world, I am hearing coming out of the mouths of guys like Todd McShay and guys, ESPN personalities who are now saying, guys like Scott Van Pelt saying, this is the greatest 1 year performance that we'll ever see.
Yeah.
And we were saying that's the kind of guy Joe is. People are like, 6 months ago. Okay, yeah, all right, that's your guy. Yeah, he's from Southeast Ohio. We get it.
It's funny how
you got
that
one
goes,
player who came out of that region, so you're going to root for him and say that he's going to be the greatest ever. Okay, whatever. Well, now the rest of the world is saying what we were saying back then.
But then you still have people saying things like, "Well, he's good, but he doesn't have. He's not great at anything." You know, they talk about his receivers and things like that, and that's the aggravating part to me because, you know, they can't point out any weaknesses. But they'll say, well, he doesn't have anything elite. If you don't have any weaknesses, that's pretty elite. Fairly elite. Yeah, exactly. But the eliteness that he brings is is his leadership.
Yeah.
And the way he approaches the game.
A lot of quarterbacks. There are a lot of quarterbacks out there who would not have played the second half of that game that he played in the national championship game.
He got drilled.
You could tell. You could see his face, especially coming off the field and saying, "Don't touch me. Don't touch me." There was no celebration after that touchdown. And there wasn't. When he came back after halftime, he had that look like, I got to work this out. Whatever it was, people were saying he didn't crack a rib or anything, but I guarantee you they were bruised. He got drilled by the Skowski. Yeah. And he played that second half. His name's not Mayfield.
I think it's important, too, because you guys made a really good point. It's important, too, because we could say, oh, woe is me. He wasn't properly rated coming out of Southeastern Ohio. And I just said it, that his underrating of his performances out of Southeastern Ohio is the reason that he didn't get a chance at Ohio State, because he just wasn't as high of a caliber recruit, and Urban Meyer never bought into him. But all those things that happened to him, because he was from Southeastern Ohio, Matt Frazee told me a great story one time.
Matt's a local guy that's on the radio here, and worked as color commentator with Lucas when Lucas was doing play-by-play for local high school games. He
was telling me a story when Athens was going to Steubenville, and they go to Steubenville, and Matt was talking to a guy in the press box, and the guy in the press box said, "Yeah, I heard you guys got a pretty good quarterback. There's no way he's as good as entered player that played in the state." Mm-hmm. And then after the game, after Burrow lit him up for some ridiculous numbers that I don't have.
It was almost 70. Athens could have put 70 on Steubenville.
Oh, 70? Okay.
They didn't.
The guy goes after the game. He says, "That's the greatest quarterback I've ever watched play live."
Yeah.
And
every
this
time.
is the thing that continuously happens. And this doubting, this chip, this consistent, him having to reach out to coaches on Twitter, him not being recruited, Urban Meyer having to have his offensive coordinator beg for him to come. All these things add up in Joe Burrow, and it's now unlocked this beast. So he wouldn't be what he is today or what he is going to be if it weren't for those doubts. And then you talk about his toughness, his appreciation for the small things in life. All that comes from where he grew up. All that comes from where he grew up. Joe Burrow would not be who he is if it weren't for Athens, if it weren't for Southeastern Ohio. And he knows that better than anybody. That's why him going to the Cincinnati Bengals, and yes, he can run a Joe Burrow Foundation for Southeastern Ohio anywhere in the country. But you know where it's most successful? If he's winning playoff games in Cincinnati. That's where it's most successful. That's where it gets the most traction. That's where it gets the most outside support. If you can have offices in Cincinnati, you can go in the middle and have offices around Hillsborough in central Southern Ohio, then over in Athens County, in Gloucester. Like, from a public relations perspective for Joe Burrow, there's a chance that him being successful in the NFL, especially in Cincinnati, Ohio, could elevate this entire region of the state, this entire region of the country, to places that it really has never been able to go. Because I'm telling you, over the next 20 years, Joe Burrow just told every single kid that's in Gloucester, in Albany, in Athens, in Logan, every single one of those kids that always thought, no, that didn't even try to get recruited because they thought they weren't good enough, because they told they weren't good enough. He just looked in the eyes of every single one of those kids, and every single kid that's going to come along, and every single kid that will watch him play on Sundays for the Cincinnati Bengals, and he's telling them, it doesn't matter where you're from, keep pushing, keep trying. This success from Joe Burrow, it's what makes Athens great today. Because look at Joey Moore. So do you know how Joey Moore was elevated this year for Athens High School? Because he saw the success of Joe Burrow. He bought in. He was serious. He was like, wow, he had that type of success here. I just got to pay attention and lock in. Oh, and it helps that Joey Burrow gave him a few phone calls throughout the season to give him some advice. That elevated Athens because of what he did at Athens. Now, because he's successful nationally, he's going to elevate the whole region athletically. So don't be surprised if a state championship comes out of Athens County over the next 20 years, because kids are only going to work harder. Kids are only going to be more inspired. Kids are only going to be able to believe more. This is the type of story that changes a place, that changes a region, that changes a country. And that's what's so amazing about Joe Burrow.
That's an amazing point, Lucas. And I think, obviously this is the Coaching Life podcast. We're here to help, coaches and players and everybody associated with youth and high school sports get better.
Change, a key word there.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's the story to me. Isn't, because people's going to say Joe is 1 in a million. You know what? Joe is 1 in a million. Mm-hmm. He is an exception to the rule. But what makes Joe great is his preparation.
He made himself 1 in a million.
Yes, and the way that he approached his craft, and that covers so many different areas. It doesn't just have to be football. It's about life and the way that you approach life and the way that you work at it. And if you have that type of desire and drive, and you approach things like Joe Burrow approached football, you will be successful. There is no doubt about it. Yeah. You will be a successful human being.
Lucas, we had Nathan Rourke in here on the podcast not long ago, and we asked him that very question: What makes you? What would you say to every kid who is a high schooler right now, who wants to have the kind of success that you've seen here at Ohio University, be the kind of athlete that you are, and as well as others who find themselves in places of prominence. Granted, it's not the same stage that Joe is on, but Nathan's pretty well known here. He's a heck of a player, heck of a person. And the answer that he gave right off was, he said, the first word that comes to my mind is sacrifice. And he said, what I mean by that is, when you're in high school, you have to sacrifice things that other people just commonly do.
Yep.
And you have to the way they commonly think, and the way they commonly speak, and it's the way they commonly go about their day. People who have this kind of success later on, they aren't doing those same things in high school. And that's exactly the way Joe was here.
I think a great quote for that is, uncommon achievements are never accomplished by common people. I mean, that's
truth.
That's the quote that needs to resonate. And you cannot be, and this is not to say you need to sacrifice your life and not be happy and don't have friends. And you don't have to be a great football player or dedicate that many hours to something. That's not what I'm saying at all. It's just, you can't be a common denominator. You can't be average if you want to be great. You can't be average in your preparation. You can't be average in the way you go about things. You can't be average if you're in a business in the way you write emails. You can't be average. It's if you want to be successful, if you want to be great at anything. And this is why sports is such a great teacher for life, because sports forces you and forces you into a box, because there's winning and losing and batting averages and touchdown to interception ratios. There's really good measures of success. If you want that success, if you want to be great, if you want to be something special, everything you do has to be that. Your workouts, your diet, your approach, all that has to be that. Now, maybe you were given some God-given talents that'll carry you pretty far, but if you want to be the best version of yourself, you need all those things.
And that's the key.
And I think we've seen that in the Athens quarterbacks, and I think they were all three inspired to do all those little things correctly to be the best versions of themselves. They weren't Joe Burrow. They weren't as naturally talented or as creepily poised as Joe Burrow, the things that make him great, but their preparation, their dedication, their commitment, their study of the game weren't, I'm not saying up to the levels of Joe Burrow, but they were pretty close. I mean, I think we see it time and time again from great athletes all across the board, and we see it time and time again from great people across the board. And I'm just so happy that Joe Burrow is showing that entire region with a lot of talented kids, with a lot of people that have not fulfilled their potential, that you can reach your potential if you just keep pushing, if you just keep trying.
Yeah.
Great word.
You got about 5 minutes for one more thing?
Yeah, about 5 minutes.
Okay.
I've got a meeting, another long drive because of this ginormous city.
Yeah. Well, every time I'm going to explain to you, I'm going to give you a visual here of something that you're not seeing, but here right now in the studio, every time you mention two things in the same sentence, and that is Joe Burrow in the same sentence with Cincinnati Bengals. I don't know if you've heard it or not, but there's a big sigh that takes place in our microphones. It's not coming from me. and just a rolling of the eyes and a shaking of the head. That's what our diehard Browns fan over here, my partner Pat, has been doing every time the words, and this isn't just you, every time I mention it, Joe Burrow with I almost said Browns, with the Bengals for the next 10, 15 years inside that division going against his Browns, against Baker Mayfield.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Against who he's a much better quarterback than. Like, let's do the Baker Mayfield, Joe Burrow comp. So what's Joe Burrow's best physical trait in football? It's arm accuracy, right? What was Baker Mayfield's coming out of college? Accuracy. What's their second biggest trait? Creativity and escapability. Joe Burrow is better at creativity and escapability than Baker Mayfield was. What's their next best trait? That fire, that intensity, that, leadership ability. But Joe Burrow's better in that because he stops at the mic. He doesn't let bad quotes get out there.
Oh,
he
my
credits
goodness.
the chefs. He credits the chefs and trainers instead of throwing them under the bus. So there's a difference there. They both were elite statistically at a college level, and Joe Burrow is much better than Baker Mayfield was because, one, Joe Burrow did it in the SEC against the hardest schedule in college football history, arguably, and he had much better stats than Baker Mayfield, while Baker Mayfield did it in the Big 12. So, all those boxes are checked. Oh, and let's go to the next thing. Baker Mayfield's 6 foot tall, and Joe Burrow is 6'4". He is a better prospect and a better player right now than Baker Mayfield is, and it's not even close. Baker might be better next year because he has a little more NFL experience, but we just saw him be the 31st best quarterback in the NFL this season, so maybe not. I really do think there's a chance that this is the ranking of quarterbacks in the division next year. I think it's Lamar, Joe Burrow. I think Big Ben is going to look old, is going to look honestly, frankly, bad. I just don't see. I think this is the end of the road for Big Ben, and then I think it's Baker Mayfield. And I honestly think that there's a chance. I think Kevin Stefanski's around longer than Baker Mayfield. Wow. There's a chance this goes right off the rails.
Well, it's going to be hard for Joe Burrow to be the second best quarterback in the AFC North when he's playing in the AFC East for the Dolphins. But I'm not going to get. I'm not going to get into a comparison between my beloved Baker Mayfield and Joe Burrow because I feel like it's Joe Burrow week, and I have a lot of respect for him. But I will say this: there will be a time in the future that I will get the two homers here, Coach Stewart and Lucas Moore, back on the line, and we'll talk about some of these differences that you guys like to bring up about Baker Mayfield and Joe Burrow.
I can name one thing that Baker does a lot better than Joe.
Oh my gosh, here we go.
That rolling out to the right.
Listen, if you didn't practice the plays that you ran,
have you seen the 2 or 3 times Joe rolled to his right? Did you see what the result was?
I did.
Baker
was good at it 2 years ago. What were you going to say, Lucas?
He just rolls right now to escape.
Before Coach interrupted you, Lucas, what were you going to say?
Well, I was going to ask you if there was an NFL redraft tomorrow, who would you take, Joe Burrow or Baker Mayfield?
I'm not going to answer that question.
100%. I know
that's
what you'd say, Pat.
It's an easy one. I think it's such an easy one.
I'm not going to let you do that to me.
That's right. Or if the Browns had the first pick this year, who would you draft?
You mean if we have Baker Mayfield? I can't answer that question. I'm not going to answer it. You're pulling my allegiances apart there.
I'll say something too that I think is one of those intangibles that maybe I'm sure someone's thought about it. Heck, they've been analyzing this guy down to the smallest molecule. But Joe's coming into the league, and then people have actually mentioned this as a detriment, but I actually think it's positive. He's coming into the league as a 23-year-old.
Yeah,
he already has a level of maturity about him where he's experienced life. Experiences.
Some people spin that as a negative, though.
I know. I don't understand it being a negative because what are most of the problems you see with the young guys coming into the NFL at 18, 19 years old? They get themselves in trouble. They're not mature.
The argument is he's peaked physically.
Yeah, the reason why he chooses his words wisely in interviews is because, maturity does come with age.
Yeah, I mean Baker's the same age, so. he was an old quarterback.
Okay.
He was, yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Yeah, but even if he has peaked guys, if this is Joe Burrow's ceiling, I'm telling you, the quarterback that played this year would have still been the second best quarterback in the AFC North this season. If Joe Burrow weren't at LSU this year and he were with the Cincinnati Bengals, it would have been the same. He is that ready for this. He should be. he should be the starter now. The Bengals should come out today and say, we've given Joe Burrow the playbook.
Not only is he our
starter
first
week
pick,
1.
we're just going to go ahead and tell you.
He's going to hold out. He's going to hold out. No,
You know Joe's not going to hold out.
I
You know
agree.
that family. We all know that.
No, I know.
He's not
I
gonna
agree.
Say no.
Joe
That's not the
loves
Burrows. We know
football,
that.
And I'm not.
He would. I mean, granted, he's going to get paid,
I'm not worried. Oh yeah,
but he's the kind of guy that I know would play.
I'm not worried at all about Joe going to the Bengals organization, and I agree with what you know. Let me step out of my Browns fandom here for a second. I agree with what you said about the Bengals organization. They're not as bad as an organization as what people make them out to be. So they should definitely make him the number 1 pick. There's no doubt about that. The only thing I would say is I do worry, like coaching matters. And if you get Joe in there and you're doing things that, he's for whatever reason in the NFL, coaches think it's necessary to run their own systems, to do things that it doesn't most benefit the team. I don't understand it. And one of the knocks on Joe is Joe Brady and the fact that, Joe Burrow ran the offense that he ran in high school. People say, well, he ran the exact same offense in college that he ran in high school. Yeah. What do you?
Yeah, because they were running an NFL offense at Athens.
Yeah, and my point is, so what? Like, what is the negative in doing something that you're good at? It makes no sense. The argument makes no sense at all to me. Like they have to.
I think it's a positive. Guys. He's been running an NFL offense since he was 15 years old.
I completely agree with you.
I think that's a major positive.
Yeah, but you know what I'm saying. People spin that. You know what I mean? They spin that he only had one.
Well, they
year.
use it as an argument for him to not being a well-rounded player.
Yes.
Not being as good as.
And they're like, well, his first year at LSU wasn't that great. Well, yeah, because they handed off 480 times.
And he got there in the late spring.
Right.
He had a couple of months to prepare with that group. We said it. Give him an entire year and watch how that place changes.
Yeah.
So, yep.
I'm gonna throw up now, Lucas. I appreciate you coming on.
Absolutely, man. It's really good. It's good to talk to you.
It was a lot of fun. Thanks for having me.
Very good to talk to you. We wish you all the success in the world out there.
Oh, hey, what are your 2 podcasts you're doing?
That's right.
Right now, I'm doing On the Shore. That's a weekly or so podcast with my buddy Max McDoulan. And then I am doing a podcast for Golden State Media Concepts. They're a company out in California. And that one's on soccer. That comes out about 3 times a week. So those are the 2 projects. And then I'm, just working in the city and, searching for other opportunities and still doing play-by-play and streaming. So staying busy. It's a little bit of a change. I do miss a lot of my role in Athens, but we are definitely happy here, and it's a great move to the city, and it's been a lot of fun. And I'm excited to come on this podcast in the future, and hopefully even have more things that I'm involved in.
Good deal. We'll plan on having you around near the draft. How about that?
There you go.
Yes, please do.
Well, brother, you're going to get big opportunities. There's no doubt in my mind. We'll be looking for your name someday, and we hope that when you do, that you're still willing to come on this little podcast that we do.
So. I always, if it's a phone call, anytime. Seriously, it's a lot of fun. I love talking coaching, and I'm actually doing a little bit of coaching here in Chicago, and it's a little different because it's not teams; it's more individual lessons. But it's just a blast all the way around. I really appreciate you guys having me on. Thank you so much, and go Joe Burrow.
We agree.
I do agree.
Take it easy,
Lucas.
man.
Thank you.
Well, how about we table let's table the rest of today's podcast plan, and we'll move it to episode 38.
Yeah, I like to have these types of episodes, and
I do too.
In my mind, I'm thinking of some people out there that listen and that have given me some opinions about some things that we talk about.
Well, everybody's interested in Joe Burrow right now.
Yeah,
I mean,
but you know what? I always like to bring it back, and I think for me, like I said earlier, we have a lot of kids. Obviously, I need to say we have a lot of kids in our area that play sports, and I think it's easy to quickly accept the idea that you're probably not going to be good enough to be real, I guess you could say. Reality
is too much. I think the whole idea of reality is too big today.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, what's the most popular TV in these today? Reality TV. No one dreams anymore. No one thinks. No one has imagination anymore. You know, I mean, I love C.S. Lewis. And the reason I love C.S. Lewis is because he takes just incredible fantasy, magical stories that make no sense, trees talking and animals talking and things like that. But he writes narrative literature, or he used to. I mean, he wrote narrative literature, the Chronicles of Narnia, the Great Divorce, the Screw Tape Letters. All these things are figurative in nature because it's just all fantasy. It's all make believe. But they make incredible points. And some of the greatest things kids could do is, I think, read that stuff and dream and imagine and think about big things much bigger than they are now. Because some of that may not come true. You may not be able to reach your greatest dreams, but it's never going to if you don't aim for it.
Exactly, and I think that's the point. I think when you look at Joe Burrow, if you look at the way that he prepared, the way that he worked, the way that he dedicated himself to his craft, and his craft, it could be anything. You could be dedicated to anything, but if you look at the way that he approached it, what you're looking at is how to dream.
Yeah,
you're right.
Exactly, and he was doing it at their age.
Yeah.
5 years old, 6 years old, 7 years old. What do you say? My dream has always been. Now he said on TV his dream has always been to hold this trophy up. My wife will tell you, she pull out a paper from 6th grade that says, yeah. What do you want to do? What do you want to be when you grow up? The first thing he wrote was NBA basketball player.
Oh, well.
And he wanted to hoist the whatever that, I don't even know what the NBA trophy is at the end of the year.
Neither do I.
That shows you how much I watch the NBA. But his favorite sport was basketball. Jimmy said that his best sport was baseball. Favorite was basketball. Favorite to play was basketball. So really, football was his third sport. Imagine what that dude could have done at the other two sports.
Right.
I mean, it's just as good as he's become. But the fact is, he was saying this stuff as a young kid, and there's probably a teacher or a family member or somebody who, whether they said it out loud or not, may have thought to themselves, well, it's good to have that dream, but you got to be realistic. So let's make some realistic goals too, because you live in Southeast Ohio, the cards are stacked against you. You're probably not going to raise that national college championship trophy up. You're probably never going to be an NBA player.
Yeah.
And if somebody had said that to him, well, first of all, he's the type of kid that I even at 7 years old, if someone had said that to him, he'd have probably said, screw you. That's my dream.
Yeah.
I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
But not all kids are that way. And so as soon as you say it to someone, you could, in that moment, limit that kid forever.
Right. Right. And the thing is, if they're dreaming, if they're striving, they're getting better.
Yeah.
And they're going to be successful.
That's exactly right.
You know, dreams come along with sacrifice. We mentioned sacrifice earlier. Nathan mentioned that.
Mm-hmm.
They have sacrifice and they have pain. Yeah. You know what else has sacrifice and pain? Everything in life.
Yeah.
Everything in life. And you're gonna have to work through it and overcome it to be successful. Everybody should dream. Nobody should stop dreaming.
I'm reading a book right now by Mike Deegan. Mike is the head baseball coach at Denison University. He wrote a book called Let It Rip. He writes a blog, and a lot of this has come from his blog, sort of the way my books came to be. And it's really good. I just this morning I read through. I'm at chapter 6 now, but on chapter 4, the title of it is Dare to Dream. And this is, I mean, what we're talking about right now is precisely what he's talking about in this chapter, about how, the only way that you're going to get better is if you create dreams for yourself.
Yes.
Big ones.
Big dreams.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would say that. Don't dream to be a Major League Baseball player. Kids out there, don't dream to be a Major League Baseball player. Don't dream to play professional football.
Why not?
Here's why. Dream to be the best
There you go.
Major League Baseball player ever.
Absolutely.
The best ever.
Yeah.
Why not?
It's where
It's not supposed to be easy.
Right. It is attainable. It's not. It is.
Yeah.
It's not easy. It's not easily attainable.
Or likely.
Exactly. And it's not likely. But it is possible. It's like one of my favorite comedies, Dumb and Dumber. What are the chances you go out with me on a date and Mary Swanson says to Jim Carrey, who is Lloyd Christmas, never. And he's like, oh, not a chance at all. And she goes, oh, okay, 1 in a million. And he goes, So you're saying there's a chance, and there is. Yeah. I mean, it might be a 1 million chance, but if there's a chance, you could hit it. You could do it. And here's the thing: the more work you put in, the more sacrifice, the more of those kinds of things that we were talking about doing in preparation and fighting through all those battles, the closer the better those odds become. It's no longer 1 in a million.
The better they become, and the more doors open.
Yes.
And the better you become.
Right.
I
So then,
said them
regardless
backwards,
of whether you hit that particular goal or not, you are going to hit.
and we don't have to tell
other
our
goals.
kids. We don't have to talk about the logistics like that to our kids. That
Just
all
let them dream.
They figure that out on their own.
Right.
They figure all that out on their own.
Oh, we're too quick to give them the reality. Way too quick. I'm a believer in that.
Yeah.
I hate to see kids walking around already just defeated.
Yeah.
Knowing I'm never going to get out of this.
That's kind of how I feel when you and Lucas are talking about Joe playing for the Bengals, because I know come draft day you're going to be so heartbroken that
it's not going to happen.
Actually, you don't care. You want him to play for the Cowboys.
Yeah, maybe they'll trade.
I heard that the other day. Joe Burrow is Dak Prescott.
Who on earth said that?
I don't remember. Somebody on Twitter.
People will say anything.
I was in a
you know what?
fever-induced stupor.
Sports journalism these days is more about hot takes than getting things right.
Definitely.
I mean, like even the night of the national championship, one of those guys, I don't remember which one it was. One of those guys, it may have been one of the play-by-play guys, said he was a 2-star recruit coming out of high school to Ohio State. That is bogusly untrue. I mean, it is ludicrous. First of all, Ohio State was not looking at any 2-star quarterbacks to recruit. It's just not true. Yeah, the truth was some of the receivers that Joe was throwing to on the LSU offense were 2-star recruits.
Well, you couldn't get that out of the narrative going on national television today. So, man, we're pretty good at just running,
just talking. Yeah,
we told you that we could do this pretty easily. This is how we.
Yeah, people doubted us, man. But we had a dream to podcast. All it takes is to be able to talk about nothing we're like Seinfeld. We talk about nothing for an hour. So we hope it's not nothing. We hope that it's something. We hope that you're able to
take something away from it.
I know I did. I try to learn every time we do this. So.
Good word.
We'll come back. Yeah, we promise you that next week you're going to hear an episode with us talking about some of the actual things that we plan on our calendar to do to bring the coaching life to life, to not just talk about stuff. We have a commitment that we want to do things as well. And of course, that's going to happen these things that we're talking about are going to happen in our particular geographic location where we live. But as we do them, we will come back on and talk about them, and hopefully it will spark some interest and some desire and some movement wherever you might live and listen.
Definitely.
So we'll bring that to you next.